Ah yes, this film. This holy grail, if you can even call it that, of war cinema. But what is its own story, its own little tale of, well, production woes? Well, in the early 1980s, a Korean Christian organization, the Unification Church, headed up by the controversial figure of Sun Young-moon, an evangelist reverend, decided to enter the film business, endeavoring to find a means to fund a series of biblical epics. To do this, he decided to make a different sort of film first, a blockbuster, to then raise the millions for his dream project. Using one of Korea's most significant historical events as its basis, Inchon was born, and Moon pulled out all the stops, bringing on board an acclaimed director, writer, and even one of the medium's greatest actors to star. Should have all led to a home run, right? Well, if you've ever kept up with any type of trouble production, it's all here. Terrible weather, production staff infighting, difficult actors, it's all here. However, this does not always necessarily mean disaster, as Apocalypse Now famously proved. But as for Inchon, well, how do I... You know what? Let's just go for it. The film covers the lead-up to and subsequent attack on Inchon, a crucial battle of the Korean War, a bloody conflict between the northern and southern factions in the early 50s. Interwoven amidst the conflicts are several love stories, including one involving an extramarital affair, an American woman pretty much being shanghaied into adopting a bunch of Korean children, and of course the day-to-day life of General Douglas MacArthur, the larger-than-life military commander who planned and led the Inchon attack. Despite a decent selection of actors, headed up by none other than the one and only Sir Laurence Olivier, the performances for the most part shockingly range from passable to just plain poor, with many of the Korean cast not exactly being great emoters. Gazzara, Richard Roundtree, Jacqueline Bisset, and even Olivier himself, I can't believe I'm saying this, they're just okay. Playing within their various archetypes, but lacking much in the way of charisma or energy, with Olivier, I am loath to say, being the biggest letdown, as his MacArthur never feels all that imposing or commanding a figure, and the waxy makeup job doesn't exactly allow this great British actor to do much emoting. Most of the time, as much as I am reluctant to use this phrase, looking like a glorified statue from Madame Tussauds. Moving along to the technicals, Inchon doesn't fare that much better, which, given Terence Young's experiences helming big-budget affairs, is alarming. However, you'd never know this was the same man who made the early Connery Bond films, as Inchon is shot in an almost televisual fashion, with flat lighting, lots of two-shots and mid-shots, and often long takes, as if there was no real thought put into the planning or actual shot construction here. Not only does this approach deflate the spectacle of the battles, but it often leaves the production values, a number of which were actually on location, looking cheap and small, with a number of the interior sets looking like, well, cheap, tacky sets you'd find in any soap opera. For a movie that had upwards of $40 million at the time, which was a considerable sum, this is almost inexcusable. Sadly, even the musical score by one of my personal favorites, Jerry Goldsmith, doesn't salvage much, and mostly amounts to a so-so effort, mainly reliant on a lot of brass, which certainly does fit the military aspect, but it lacks any memorability or even much variety, and comes off as phoned in and repetitious, and at times rather droning. And so, the moment that, well, I've been dreading, we now come to the script, written by the same man as The French Connection and The Green Berets, Robin Moore. However, like Young, you'd never know someone of that caliber was attached here, based on just this film. This is mostly due to the fact that, well, Inchon is jumbled and without any focus, throwing in a bunch of different plot lines and themes without much rhyme, reason, or above all else, coherency. We have the main Korean conflict, we have the perspective of the Koreans themselves on this, We have the beginnings of the United Nations. We have the broader context of the Cold War. We have several romances. We have marital infidelity. We have military backstabbing. And we even managed to crowbar in some cute kids to rescue as well as some cheap comic relief. See the problem yet? The film is trying to perform one giant juggling act with all these elements. And big surprise, nothing ever gets fully fleshed out or explored because of this. You really don't learn that much about anyone or even the conflict itself. And considering the bloodshed in the film, it's kind of a problem when you find yourself not caring in the slightest about the death toll. Plus, much like Hugh Hudson's Revolution, there are sudden location shifts, and these are sometimes more annoying because, well, they don't always make sense in terms of reasoning. In fact, sometimes it's not even a full location shift itself, it's just a simple move to a later time without so much as a transition. 1 minute, MacArthur will be getting out of bed and talking to a soldier. The next, he'll be eating breakfast with his wife in the exact same room, but without any indication of time passing, or even just cutting away to somewhere else in the interim, as would be standard practice. Given the experience of the people involved, how then can one sit there and even rationalize such a basic filmmaking error? Trust me, there are many more examples I could bring up, but honestly, I can't really say much more about Inchon other than it's just inadequate. Never outright boring, even if the pacing is more often than not a real slog. But there just isn't anything here even halfway decent or vaguely interesting, with what could be generously termed the best elements, never amounting to honestly more than passing muster. The final attack at the end on Inchon itself is fairly decent and kind of interesting, but the build-up to it was so weak that, again, there's just no investment in the slightest. At Long Lost Love may have been smarmy, Revolution a tad schizophrenic, and Heaven's Gate a tad, well, actually no, very indulgent, but fundamentally they all accomplished what they set out to achieve and were technically well produced, even if their scripts weren't always on the money. Inchon is neither good-looking nor even remotely close to what can be considered even average writing, and is only worthy seeing for the novelty factor. Thankfully for this, you won't have to spend a ridiculous amount on bootleg DVDs, as the film has been uploaded in parts to YouTube. And so, to close off, I award Inchon the only thing it could ever deserve, a plastic star. While it never had me boiling with sheer anger, there is nothing I can say in any way, shape, or form as a positive. It's every single thing that can go wrong with war and period films, all pressed together in one unengaging offering. Unless you want to see it for the novelty of its rarity, there's no reason to ever even bother with it. And with that, we come to the end of Bob Month and the end of my 100th review. I just want to give a big shout out and thank you to everyone who has supported me along the way. I hope that I continue to produce great reviews for all of you in the future. And well, I couldn't have done all of this without your support and dedication. Thank you, everyone.